an artist and a voice for freedom. This week on Firing Line.
I think every art, if it's relevant, is political.
The son of a poet persecuted during Mao's Cultural Revolution, artist Ai Weiwei went from helping to create the iconic Bird's Nest Stadium for the 2008 Summer Olympics to becoming a captive of the Chinese government.
The prominent artist, Ai Weiwei, was taken into custody just this past Sunday.
The conditions you were held under, can you say anything about that? No, I cannot say anything.
He's taken on tyranny in Beijing and beyond with his art and his activism, identifying each of the thousands of children who perished in the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, then representing them in his art, smashing symbols of Chinese history and creating strong messages about what he observes in the world.
Did you see it later?
No, I was in detention.
What does Ai Weiwei say now?
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Charles R. Schwab, the Fairweather Foundation, the Asness Family Foundation, and by the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation and Damon Button. Corporate funding is provided by Stevens, Inc. and Pfizer, Inc.
Ai Weiwei, welcome to Firing Line.
Thank you.
Your newly published memoir is entitled 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows. You chronicle the history not just of your struggles with the Chinese government, but also your father's. And you've both suffered in exile, in imprisonment. You write, the individual's yearning for freedom can never be repressed. It always finds expression in one form or another. At what point in your journey did you learn this truth?
Well, not till very late of my age. I start working on internet. I realize there's such huge obstacles in front of me. But as long as I can keep expressing myself, I'm in good shape because I can always extend my emotions and my opinions towards other people who never have a chance to speak out their mind. So, but gradually the fight became very difficult. I was arrested. I was threatened to be put in jail for a long time. So only by that time I realized I have to write a book about the whole journey.
Well, in your book, you detail the history of your father, who was an internationally renowned poet, Ai Qing, and his tumultuous journey with the Chinese Communist Party, accused of being a rightist. Your father was banished to Xinjiang province, which is also known as Little Siberia, and you joined him, where you lived for many years with him in a dugout as the Cultural Revolution forced him to undergo reform through labor. Today we meet in the Art Students League of New York, where you studied decades later in the 1980s and the 1990s. What does New York City represent to you artistically?
It's very hard to describe New York City with one word, but it was crazy. It's very physical, and it's beyond the imagination. It's so much energy and so much desperation in one Manhattan. And after so many years I come here, I still feel the same. The city never changed.
You were in New York in 1989 when the protests in Tiananmen Square broke out, and you write in your book that you watched every moment of them on television. How did the Tiananmen Square protests influence your decision to go home?
When I left China in 1981, I made a decision I would never go back. I don't even look back. But until 1989, many students and also student leaders, which I know them, and they organized a peaceful demonstration till one day, June 4th, being crushed by military. So somehow it draws me attention back to China. And I just want to be with my father before he passed away, just to be there.
You write, young people in China today have no knowledge at all of the student protests in Tiananmen Square in 1989, and if they knew, they might not even care, for they learn submission before they have developed an ability to raise doubts and challenge assumptions. How has the Chinese government succeeded in erasing that memory?
Chinese government are very sophisticated. They succeed in every way for propaganda. They believe if they keep presenting the untruthful conclusion, the history will also rise that way. And all the young generation, they have no other way to even to raise the question or challenge this conclusion from the government. So basically the whole generation or generations of Chinese majority will be on the side of the government, which is a pity.
The internet emerged when you returned to China. So how do you see the internet and the power of the internet in 2021?
At the very beginning, I do feel internet would liberate China because that's first possibility for individual like me can speak out. But very soon, Chinese government learned faster than anybody. They know how to control the internet. They hired probably millions of internet police, just watch every sentence. So every move, every act on internet will be clearly recorded and calculated. So it becomes so sophisticated for censoring and monitoring every individual. And it's beyond imagination.
You're describing a surveillance state.
Surveillance state to its the highest extreme. It's like art, and it works so well for authoritarian state.
After the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, the Chinese government was not transparent about the deaths, particularly the deaths of students. You went on a mission to identify every single child who died in that earthquake, and you were able to assemble with your volunteers the names of 5,196 students. You say you went from being an artist to being a social activist. How do you reflect back, Ai Weiwei, on that moment when your art and your activism merged?
As I was educated, we always separated art from politics. But by 2008, after experienced this very sad story, I questioned myself as an artist, as an individual, what should I do? And of course I can write articles. I did write over 50 articles related to earthquake, but that seems not enough. I have to find new vocabulary, and that takes me to the earthquake location, and to be there to experience it.
The Munich exhibition that followed featured thousands of backpacks that formed the single sentence of one of the victims from her grieving mother.
So what I've seen is on those ruins, a lot of students' backpack is everywhere. And so I pick up some. I don't know what to do with it. It's so dirty and it's so hard even to look at it. But by 2009, I had a chance to show in Hauskunst Munich. That's a building Hitler built for his art. So I thought I'm going to change the facade of this kind of classic looking. So I designed 9,000 backpack and constructed as one sentence of this earthquake victim's mom. She said, I only want my daughter to be remembered. She happily lived in this world for 7 years. So I promised her I would do something to memorize Yang Xiaowan, who is the victim, and I did it.
You say you're an eternal optimist, but suffering is at the heart of much of your art. Is suffering necessary for you to create art?
For me, suffering is necessary. Without suffering, I will not be here. Suffering teach me so many things. Because suffering is an extreme condition human society can put on an individual. And you have to understand why and how that functions.
You've also described yourself as a provocateur, a contrarian. In 2009, when you were detained and beaten, instead of retreating, you pressed for answers, you documented the experiences, including an image that you snapped when they detained you. It went viral. And you ended up in prison for 81 days, supposedly for tax evasion. How, in that time that you were detained, did you retain a sense of individualism?
I think during that detention, you clearly understand why a state would kidnapping one individual. You see, they are really taking you seriously. So that makes me be more clear how those authoritarians are afraid of art, afraid different attitude, different opinion, and they just cannot coexist with that.
What do you think they're afraid of?
My art shakes the foundation of their legitimacy, and that probably is an obstacle they can never overcome. It's not possible for them to face in my challenge.
You received your passport back in 2015, and you left China, perhaps permanently.
I wouldn't say permanently.
That's what I want to know.
My life would be too short for any permanently. But I have a chance to leave and ask them. They said, you have freedom now. You can leave to anywhere you like to.
When was the last time you were in China?
That's 5-6 years ago.
So is it only time that has kept you away, or?
No, and also the situation in China become more extreme in terms of censorship, in terms of their tolerance to dissident, and many dissidents has been put in jail. Almost most of my friends still serving in jail now.
Do you think they would honor their commitment to you that you are free if you returned to China today?
I always trust people till I cannot trust. So I would think they would let me be free, as they should keep their words. But it has been proved they never keep their words. So,
are you hopeful about the future of China?
I'm hopeful for, I would not say future for China. China is changing, and nobody can know what exactly the future is going to be.
I wonder if that was a way of being careful to not say something. Do you think about how your words are heard in China when you answer questions like that?
I'm sure they are monitoring every words, every sentence I talk, and but that would not affect me. But only when I try to predict what is going to happen, there's many possibilities, and I don't think we can easily talk about it in one interview.
But are any of them hopeful?
I don't think so. Not in short time.
You know, your father was sent for reform through labor in Xinjiang. You were with him there. And of course, that is the site that today is a place where Uyghurs are sent for forced re-education and labor camps. What is the West's responsibility with respect to human rights in China?
what's the responsibility? I would think if you just talk about that, it would be empty words. Morally and practically, if West are not demanding the very basic values, such as human rights, freedom of speech, then the West will be totally corrupted before China get away. So this is a deadly serious problem.
In your book, you're describing the directives of Mao Zedong during the Cultural Revolution that would be distributed publicly every night. And then you write, this is your quote, "They served a function similar to Donald Trump's late night tweets while in office. They were the direct communication of a leader's thoughts to his devoted followers, enhancing the sanctity of his authority." So, do you see Donald Trump as an authoritarian?
I don't, if you're authoritarian, you have to have a system in supporting you. You cannot just be authoritarian by yourself. But certainly in United States, with today's condition, you can easily have an authoritarian. In many ways, you're already in the authoritarian state. You just don't know it.
How so?
Many things happens today in US can be compared to Cultural Revolution in China.
Like what?
Like people trying to be unified in certain political correctness. That is very dangerous. You want to go deeper?
No, yeah, because actually that was the next thing I was going to ask you about. So what kind of political correct extremism?
It's very philosophical. With today's technology, we know so much more than we really understand. The information becomes jammed, but we don't really have the knowledge because you don't work. You don't have to act on anything. Mm-hmm. You just think you're purified by certain ideas. You agree with it. That is posing dangers to society, to an extreme, divided society.
Why do you think that's happened here?
I think for a long time, the West material, we have much more than we needed. And we are not caring about global situation. But that eventually, all the policies and the politics we play has to be examined under the global situation, such as China become a very powerful state, and how West should deal with it.
How should the West deal with Chinese increased influence?
And in China, we have a wisdom to deal with anything, you have to be strong yourself. I don't think West is strong themselves enough to deal with China.
In what sense is the West not strong enough?
In many, many ways, if you can't sense what a failure the West, by lacking of vision or lacking of compassion in dealing with refugee situation, climate change, and also the war in Afghanistan, Iraq. So I don't think U.S. has the ability to really examine the situation of its own moral and aesthetic behavior.
You have for a long time called for the freedom of Julian Assange. You visited him in prison, you staged a protest against his extradition to the United States, and last year you even said, quote, "He truly represents a core value of why we are free, because we have freedom of the press." Assange has been linked in some reporting, actually lots of reporting, to Russian government. How would that change your view if he is in fact acting in concert with or on behalf of an authoritarian regime?
Julian Assange exposed US invasion in Afghanistan or Iraq, which use to kill civilians and exposed. That's the fact. That's why US hate him. It's not because he connect to Russian, but rather because those information US think should not let public know. But does public have the right to know? I think it's very, very important for public to know, and very, very important for journalists have their own possibilities to reveal the truth.
Would it change your view of him if you found he were acting in concert with an authoritarian regime?
It will not change my view because his platform also may support the US government in some way. Anybody can get the information. He's only provide that possibility. He represents journalism, especially investigative journalism. If he being punished, that means many journalism, the act would be questionable and no longer to have someone to investigate the government, which very often, doesn't matter China or US, is hidden activities which nobody would ever know.
Do you think that any state has the right to keep anything secret?
Of course, they all have rights to keep things secret and protect their citizens, but they should not have rights to have secret to hiding dirty games. There's a lot of dirty games going on.
I think the debate, right, is over whether Assange threatened individuals who work for the government.
People like Assange or Snowden or Chelsea Manning, this is just a few individuals. There's millions work for the government. It just jumped out a few guys who happen to have a conscience to say, hey, this is not something we should do.
Do you think that your standing up to Chinese authorities is the same as their standing up to their governments?
I think my act in defending human rights or individual freedom would exactly match what they did. We're in different locations, facing different problems, but I understand them very well. They take personal risk. They may end up in jail. If Julian being extradited to US, he's facing 175 years in jail by being espionage. He's a political prisoner.
Do you think there's a moral difference between the government of China and the government of the United States? Does representative democracy create a different system whereby the process for adjudicating crimes against the state is morally different than the process for adjudicating perhaps your quote-unquote crime against the state in a totalitarian
they
regime?
are different, but they have similarities.
They
have a very big difference, but they do have a lot of similarities.
In 1968, on the original firing line, William F. Buckley Jr. welcomed Allen Ginsberg, this famous Beat Generation poet from the United States. Allen Ginsberg is somebody that your father knew and somebody that you met when you were here in New York. Take a look at this clip of Allen Ginsberg reciting a poem on the original version of this program in 1968.
Breath trembles in white daisies by the roadside. Heaven breath and my own symmetric. Airs wavering through antlered green fern drawn in my navel. Same breath as breathes through Capelifan. Sounds of Aleph and Aum through forests of gristle. My skull and Lord Hereford's knob equal, all Albion one. I kind of like that.
He's truly amazing. He's not a normal poet. He's a soul. He's represented the soul of the intellectual world in America. And it's so beautiful.
Well, it was Ginsberg who told you, you need to write down your memories. Yes. And the first thought is always the best, which has led perhaps to 1,000 years of joys and sorrows. Do you see more joys or more sorrows for your son, Ai Lau?
What I'm satisfied by, if I look back for my experience, I think the joys and the sorrows are half and half. They balance each other's, and that make me feel satisfied.
Ai Weiwei, thank you for being here on Firing Line, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for you posting some tough questions. I love that.
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Charles R. Schwab, the Fairweather Foundation, the Asness Family Foundation, and by the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation and Damon Button. Corporate funding is provided by Stevens, Inc. and Pfizer, Inc.
You're watching PBS.